For over 15 years, Saturdays and a legal curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Along with Dave Manouk, along with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours to talk about everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. The musical chairs, they may not have completely come to an end, but they certainly are slowing down in the aftermath of NHL free agency and, of course, the NHL draft. So now it's time to begin to look forward to next year. Might there still be some changes? Most certainly. We will deal with those if and when they come about. But for now, the Winnipeg Jets are mostly, I would suggest, locked in for next season. Gentlemen, good to see you both on this Saturday morning, the penultimate show before we go off for summer hiatus, but it is great to see you both on this, the 5th day of the month of July, Ezzy's birthday month at that. So something for everybody to look forward to.
Not just Ezzy's birthday month, but Gary M., my dad's birthday day today, and Auntie Maureen's birthday tomorrow. So the Manooks are celebrating birthdays in July.
There you
Absolutely. Shout out to Uncle Gary and shout out to Maureen. And yes, it's a birthday month for me, Drew. It's not just one day. I like everybody to celebrate the entire month of July. I am a good Leo, so you know that's how us Leos like it. We like a full celebration. But yeah, you mentioned there's definitely lots of new players to talk about, guys. It started, I think Dave will agree, it started off slow on Canada Day, but then the signings, like it was, I don't know how you were keeping up with it, Dave, on the website, to be honest with you. But obviously, there's some new players to talk about. Nikolaj Ehlers is not one of them, unfortunately. And, it's going to be a different team next year. It's amazing how, you lose 3 or 4 players and you replace those guys and it changes the dynamic of the team, right? I obviously still think the Jets are going to be able to build on last year, but Ehlers is not going to be an easy one to replace.
No, he will not be. And of course, it took a while. It took a long while. It took, many days, in fact, before Nikolaj Ehlers officially announced himself, Dave M., as a member of the Carolina Hurricanes. And we'll get into that, of course, over the course of the next couple hours. Murat of The Athletic going to join us at bottom of hour number 1. And then bottom of hour number 2, we'll welcome Haydn Fleury, who re-signed with the Winnipeg Jets, foregoed the opportunity to hit free agency. And he'll join us at 10:30 this morning to talk about that decision and his trajectory within the Winnipeg Jets organization and his goals for the 25-26 season and onward. So we look forward to that. Let's start with, I guess, on a celebratory note. And that's the sort of the feeling that it was yesterday, Dave. You were there, not in the Matt Frost Media Center because it was such a larger event. It was held in a different facility, different room at the arena downtown. And that is the official announcement and unveiling of Jonathan Toews as a member of the Winnipeg Jets. We've talked about the fit on the on ice. We've talked about the what he can bring to the team and what he can bring to the role and how, the Winnipeg Jets will adapt and shift with his presence now on the team. But take us inside the room yesterday, Dave, and the vibe and the feeling that was permeating. You heard from Kevin Shoveldayoff. You heard from Jonathan Toews. His mom got a shout out. Always when you can start a press conference with "Hi, Mom," that's not necessarily how things are usually go in the buttoned up world of the NHL. But take us inside the room from yesterday.
I will indeed, Drew, do that. But before I do, I just want to reflect on all the topics we have to talk about, because as I wrote in the sort of description of this show, it's amazing to think that it was just a week ago we were getting people set up for the second day of the draft.
Right.
And since we've ended that show, the Jets obviously signed Haydn Fleury, but that was kind of at the end of our show. But they did rounds 2 to 7. They had the draft. They had the development camp. They had all the signings. They lost Nikolaj Ehlers. Like this is going to be a fulsome show, folks.
Since last week, Dave has already broken bread with Phil DiGiuseppe.
Yeah, there was, let's put it this way. LegalCurve.com was buzzing this week, but that's the way I love it. Anyways, to get you set. Yeah, no, it was an interesting sort of ceremony because, it's not, as Scott Brown, when he introduced it, said, it's not normal for them to do press conferences like that, especially like it's one thing for media to be there, but to have friends and family. They even had season ticket holders who had won an opportunity to be in the building for the announcement. And then, of course, like you said, Drew, Jonathan Toews' parents were sitting front and center for their son's introduction. So he landed from wherever, I don't know where he was coming from, but he landed in Winnipeg, and of course, Mark Chipman's there to meet him. They drive over.
He actually took your private jet. That was the part that was most surprising.
I was trying
you loaned him the private jet that he could fly in on.
I saw that when I saw him land on the PJ, I was like, well, I can't wait for Ezzy or Drew to make that joke, but most likely Drew. Ezzy doesn't try and reuse jokes, so we'll go with Drew on that one. But
it's not reusing it; it's the continuation of an ongoing theme.
Fair enough.
It's a callback. It's actually very apropos for comedy. Our friends at Rumors would tell us.
There you go. That's your milieu, so you would know. But anyway, so Toews, lands, and then of course the ceremony supposed to start at 1, and this press conference, I should say. And yeah, they did it. And look, just in case anybody didn't get to witness anything, thanks to Colby Spence, our crack videographer/photographer, we have that media availability on our YouTube channel, of course, on illegalcurve.com, as were the 3 breakaway scrums we did with Jonathan Toews, we did with Kevin Cheveldayoff and Scott Arniel. But the fact is that, yeah, there was a lot of excitement. You could hear from him the idea of wearing a Jets jersey and being able to kind of take a step back into the light and understanding like, oh, there's going to be pressure and I'm ready for it. And, Scott Arniel's kind of overarching theme was the idea that Toews has expressed to him, he's not looking for anything to be handed to him. Kevin Cheveldayoff, the idea from him was there's an expectation that the player is going to be, impactful both on and off the ice, Ezzy. But it was clear that he wasn't saying, in day 1, he's going to score, or game 1, sorry, he's going to score 3 goals. And even Toews, when he was asked about, I don't remember the exact wording in the way he was asked, but he essentially was like, is there a lot of pressure, whatever, or do you have goals? And he said, look, I'm not setting expectations of myself to be like, I'm going to get 20 goals and 40 assists, but the reality is I'm going to, try and be impactful. And really, as my big takeaway was the impact off the ice that he's going to have on it as well, even just from a practice perspective. Because, when Scott Arniel was asked, or Chevy, I think, was talking about when he mentioned it to the leadership group, like they were universal, like let's bring him on board. And you heard about when he was asked about, Jamie Thomas asked him about Adam Lowry, and he basically said, like, there's, you could just see the respect. And Toews clearly has paid attention to the Jets. And the other thing that folks should be, I think, somewhat excited about was the fact that he clearly had his pick of teams. He clearly didn't just have Winnipeg and he's like, okay, Winnipeg's my only option. Mm-hmm. It sounded like, from the way he discussed it, that there were a number of teams that were pursuing him, as did Kevin Cheveldayoff.
A-list teams at that.
Yeah, again, the understanding was Colorado was interested. The understanding that was Tampa Bay was interested. So he had options to sign with another team. He didn't have to sign with Winnipeg, but he chose Winnipeg because that was where, I guess his desire to kind of, I think I saw it in the Globe and Mail, called it like the storybook nature of this. Mm-hmm. And I said, of course, as I wrote about it in the morning papers, I said the storybook nature only ends with a storybook ending of him winning the Stanley Cup. But I mean, let's not put the cart before the horse. I thought it was a really good ceremony and introduction. And the Hi Mom thing was pretty funny when he did that. But there's clearly a lot of excitement in Jets land right now with Jonathan Toews signing.
Well, this is the longest Ezzy's started the show without talking,
yes.
So we might as well bring him into the program right now.
Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Ginsburg, your thoughts on the press conference and the announcement, the ceremony yesterday.
I think Dave nailed it, Drew. Like, this is a press conference that had a lot of excitement. like Drew mentioned, this was not just a typical press conference in the Matt Frost Media Center. You had Premier Wab Canoe there. You had Mayor Scott Gillingham. Drew mentioned Jonathan Toews' family was there. And I agree, that was really funny, starting off with Hi Mom. I thought that just kind of set the tone. It wasn't a serious press conference. Like, this was celebratory. It was very, I guess, low key, if you want to use that term. I wasn't there. Dave obviously was. But it seemed like a lot of fun, and there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, I think, guys, after watching this press conference, because obviously, as we get closer and closer to training camp and next season, then we're going to be spending more time talking about, is Jonathan Toews able to actually play second line center minutes, and who's he going to play with, and all of that stuff. But for now, I think it's just a lot of optimism and a lot of excitement, because like Dave said, Jonathan Toews did not sign a 1-year contract, just to have a decent season.
Be a warm body.
Exactly. He's here to push this team to the next level, to get to the Stanley Cup. And everybody is clear about that. Like Dave said, the leadership group of Adam Lowry, Josh Morrissey, and Mark Scheifele and others, they know what Jonathan Toews can do. And, he's been out of the league for a couple of years. Everybody knows that. But I think that there's a little bit of rolling the dice here, guys. Right? I think when, this is to me, there's risk involved in the contract, even though it's only a 1-year contract, just the amount of money you're giving. But the reward could end up being very high if Jonathan Toews is able to help you get further into the playoffs and ultimately win a cup, right? So it's exciting, and it's nice to see. Winnipeg, we're often, it's a lot of negative stories in terms of us not being able to attract free agents and everything like that. So I think this was a day for the city to kind of thump their chest, so to speak, right?
Yeah, no question about it. In that sense, it's certainly it's a good news story, and I don't think it's any coincidence that the press conference yesterday happened when it happened. Sort of after Nikolaj Ehlers made his announcement that he was going elsewhere. I mean, I think the writing was pretty clearly on the wall that was going to be how it is. But instead of the conversation being, and we'll get to that point in the conversation because we always cover all angles here on the program, instead of the conversation being the Jets, are subtracting from their roster and they're not as good as they were last year, and I do believe that to be the case, at least on paper right now, the story to start the weekend is about Jonathan Toews. It is about the homecoming. It is about the litany of Toews jerseys that are going to be sold through the Winnipeg Jets organization and everything along those lines. And it's exciting for people. And I don't think that, that should be diminished in any way, shape, or form. This is a to be determined hockey decision, but from a business decision, it's a no-brainer for the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, whatever they're going to end up paying in salary to Jonathan Toews, I think is going to be more than made up for it in ancillary revenues associated with the ticket sales, jersey sales, things of that nature. So from the business perspective of True North, I think it was a very good decision. As for the hockey, well, we all know that we don't yet know. You take Jonathan Toews at his word, and I think that he deserves that because, as he said from the start, he's not coming to just, take a paycheck and hang on. He's trying to be an impactful player on what was a very good hockey team last year that is less impressive on paper right now, thanks to the Nikolaj Ehlers departure more than anything else that has occurred so far in free agency. So let's talk about that now. Nikolaj Ehlers, he signs with the Carolina Hurricanes.
Shouldn't you introduce the segment as The Decision 2025?
Yeah. I let other people hype it up, giving the time and the updates as to what the timestamp is in Denmark as it was getting later and later, and would the announcement come out and when would it come out and everything along those lines. But it took Nikolaj Ehlers a while to come to a decision. he ended up, I think.
It's funny, Drew. Sorry to
go
cut in. It's like those 3 days that he took to make the decision seemed like it was like 3 weeks, right? Like it really wasn't that long. It was July 3rd, right?
Well, it's because we're used to free agent signing, 12 minutes after free agency opens, or not even get to that point in time because there's a sign and trade that happened between the Leafs and the Golden Knights. I see on my second screen here that our buddy Mike McIntyre is actually speaking with Nikolaj Ehlers right now. He tweeted out a picture of Nikolaj Ehlers, and the quotes that he came out with so far are, quote, like, this is what Nikolaj Ehlers is telling Mike McIntyre, like I told the Jets, they didn't do anything wrong, said Winnipeg and his teammates became family. Quote, for me, it was more about trying something new, challenging myself, and seeing different things. That's the quote that Nikolaj Ehlers has given to our buddy Mike McIntyre. I'm sure a fulsome article and a fulsome
Is Mike
report.
in Denmark?
No, I think they're doing it via Zoom, would be my guess.
Okay.
But a fulsome article to come from our buddy Mike McIntyre, and we'll have that, of course, on the website just as soon
and
as
more
it's
importantly,
published.
we'll have the media availability on the website. So
there you go, exactly right, as well. So that's where Nikolaj Ehlers, I think once the writing was there, you knew it wasn't going to be about dollars and cents. It was going to be about opportunity. It was going to be about Nikolaj getting a chance to write his own story. That's what happens when you get to free agency, is you can write your own story and you can write a new chapter in your storybook. And that to me is what Nikolaj Ehlers has done here. Do you think the Jets should have, or it's easy to be Monday morning quarterbacking it. Do you think the Jets should have handled it in any sort of different way, or do you think that given everything that was happening last year, the success of the team, playing it out, and unfortunately seeing him walk for nothing is sort of just the way it had to be from the Winnipeg Jets perspective?
I think it's the latter, guys. Like, I think we all were optimistic that the Jets were going to be able to keep Ehlers, right? But he wanted a change of scenery, and obviously, I'm not interested in getting into the usage and all that, because to me that's been well documented. Everybody knows. Everybody. That's a story that I'm just quite frankly sick of talking about in terms of his usage, because it definitely is a talking point. But to me, it's a moot point at this point because he's gone. He's not going to be. We're not going to be breaking down Ehlers and Appleton's ice time anymore, right, Dave? So
both of whom are gone.
Right,
Appleton
exactly.
signing in Detroit for a couple of years.
Yeah. The Red Wings continue to sign ex-Jets, Andrew Kopp, Ben Sherratt. But look, I really do think that Ehlers is and look. At Ehlers' age, and you have the opportunity to become an unrestricted free agent, that's what you can do. I mean, and that's why I don't fault him, and I don't fault any player for deciding to choose another team. But obviously, at this point in his career, he's looking at his options, and he thinks Carolina is a better option for him personally. Obviously, Jets fans, some Jets fans, it's difficult for them to accept that, just because Ehlers spent all of his 10 years, he was drafted by the Jets and everything like that. But I don't think, Drew, that the Jets did anything wrong here. At least I don't have any reason to think that they've done anything wrong here. I mean, you could go back to the Paul Maurice era, or you could go back to the Rick Bowness era, and you could say that, maybe if the Jets used him more, maybe that would have changed things. Like if his ice time was more prominent, if he was on the first power play, we could play the game of what if. But the Jets happen to have Kyle Connor ahead of Nikolaj Ehlers on that top line. So it was never, look, we've gone over this so many times, right, Dave? And, we've discussed, that Ehlers, based on his production, his production per 60 minutes, if you look at it, I think it's top 15 in the NHL. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I know our buddy Garrett Hole had the number out, but I mean, the numbers clearly indicated that Ehlers should have received more ice time. But again, that doesn't matter at this point, guys. Like, Ehlers has chosen Carolina, and he had a great time, and I'm going to miss watching him play for the Jets.
Yeah, he was certainly an exciting, dynamic player, and the ice time. What I find interesting, I know we don't want to necessarily relitigate the ice time debate, Dave, but I do find it interesting that multiple coaches all sort of felt the same way. Regarding his ice time. I know that the underlying numbers would say play this guy more, he produces more, but I do find it a little bit interesting that multiple coaches elected not to do so. That they said, that the multiple coaches adopted the less is more, when it came to Nikolaj and his ice time. I wish him nothing. Look, he played 10 years with the Winnipeg Jets. I don't think anybody would ever say he cheated the Winnipeg Jets in terms of effort or on-ice performance or how he represented himself as a member of the Winnipeg Jets and within the Winnipeg community. You're not obligated to spend your entire career with one team, which might be something that, people in Edmonton and people in Toronto might want to hear those words a little bit, as it pertains to Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, players of that ilk. Players reach free agency and can choose their next paths. Nikolaj gave everything to the Winnipeg Jets organization. He did everything by all accounts with class. And he wanted to go live in Raleigh, North Carolina. Well, you know what? I've been to Raleigh, North Carolina a couple times. It's a nice city. And if you don't want to be in a hockey-crazed market, Carolina seems like a pretty good alternative from Winnipeg in that case.
Well, the only thing I was surprised about, because I don't think anybody was surprised, Ezzy, or Drew, that it was Carolina, right? We all thought Carolina was the natural place. We've heard about it for so long. It's interesting. The one thing that we did learn yesterday when we had the breakaway chats with Kevin Cheveldayoff was that Ehlers had told them the night before the decision was made. So I guess the decision was made 2 days ago. So I guess 3 nights ago, he called Kevin Cheveldayoff to let him know that the Jets weren't going to be the place he chose. But ultimately, that showed you that he was still considering the Winnipeg Jets. They were still somewhat in the running. And then when Cheveldayoff asked Nikolaj where he was going, he said, "I still don't know," which leads you to believe that it was down to, let's say, 2, 3.
We heard
maybe.
Carolina. We heard Washington.
I would imagine Tampa Bay as well was, I think, an option.
Somebody even said Colorado, which really would have been a knife in the hearts of everybody.
I would have been shocked. I mean, I understand it's especially because I think Colorado has about $9 million in cap space or something like that. I think they cleared some. So, anyways, the fact of the matter is though that the Jets were in it till the very end, which is interesting because Murat, who's coming on with us in 5 minutes, had asked Kevin Cheveldayoff if he felt that because they were felt like they were still going to be invited to the dance, did that prevent him from making a decision like, a sign and trade that would allow them to get a player back? And, Kevin Cheveldayoff was magnanimous and just basically said, like, look, this is his prerogative and we still were in it till the end trying to, get the player done, to a deal. But ultimately, you're right. And like I said, the only thing that surprised me was I was surprised it was only a 6-year deal. I thought, at his age, if I'm Nikolaj Ehlers, I'm betting, obviously the cap is going up. But then if you think the cap is going to go up, then you'd be more inclined to sign like a 4-year deal, kind of like what we're seeing, right, Ezzy? And then you say, okay, well, the cap's going to go way up. I can get more because I'll be 33. But for him to take the deal and be 35 when it ends, I don't know how big a deal he's going to get at 35. So I just was surprised that he didn't sign for a 7-year deal as opposed to signing 6 years, because I felt like, I would have been shocked if Winnipeg's offer to him wasn't 8 years. I don't know what the number would have been,
sure,
but you have to think that there was a guaranteed. So you're right, Drew. Ultimately, he decided this is what he wanted. I know he's got family in Florida, so maybe he wants to be closer to them. He's got, we heard the quote insiders saying stuff like maybe a little bit less, well, obviously some warmth, which we know because Nikolaj's never made it a secret that he doesn't love the cold. He's been talking about that since back in the Patrick Laine days when we'd be talking to him. So that's not a secret there. But ultimately also, like I said, usage is probably a big factor. And again, it's ironic because the one thing that I didn't really understand was being too bright in Winnipeg. Because, don't get me wrong, Carolina
is a media market. Well, so
yeah. That's what I'm talking about. But to me, like that, is there a quote you've got?
There is a quote. So Mike,
well, and Nikolaj Ehlers never said the media was an issue, right?
Well, so Mike asked Nikolaj about the reports, and these were reports from outside of Winnipeg. I'll point out these were reports from Dreger and I think Elliot Friedman. So some of the insiders, the capital I insiders. Mike McIntyre asked Nikolaj Ehlers about the reports. He was looking for a quote quieter market for his next home. Nikolaj replied, quote, "It wasn't the media. I love you guys." So that's what Nikolaj. Winnipeg is not a difficult media market.
But it's not about. I think it's not just media. but I think fan interactions were always respectful as well. So I don't think I think it's like where there's I took
The
that
passion,
not to
you're saying. The
yeah,
passion within the community.
I just took it to mean I want to have more anonymity versus like, oh my God, they're asking me such hard questions, and it's like
or they're being unfair to me, something like
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Dave, can we be honest though? Like, I feel
course.
like anytime a player leaves a Canadian city, or there's a pending UFA from a Canadian city, whether it's Vancouver, whether it's Calgary, whether it's Winnipeg, I find that those are like tired observations. They want to get out of the spotlight. I mean, look, Carolina, like Drew will agree. I've never been to Raleigh. I've heard from Drew that it's a beautiful city, and hopefully I'd like to visit there one day. That's a hockey.
Hang on, I have the Raleigh Board of Tourism on the phone. They say no.
Okay, so apparently I've been blacklisted from going to North Carolina. But I mean, you would agree, guys, that this is a hockey mad market. Like, this is a team.
But it's different, Desi. You can.
No, I'm not comparing it to Winnipeg, but I'm just saying, like, the Hurricanes have a devoted fan base. That's what I'm saying. They do very well, and they're a team that they have Stanley Cup aspirations. So all I'm saying, Dave, is I'm not poo-pooing what you were saying. I'm just saying, like, I get tired of every time a player leaves a Canadian market, like Winnipeg. It's like, oh, he couldn't handle the pressure. It's too intense in the Canadian hockey market. It's like, is it really? Like, I'm pretty sure Ehlers love playing here, and most Jets love playing here, and they love interacting with fans, and they have no problem interacting with media. So I just think that kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's unfounded.
Well, it's about creating a narrative, right? And people love to throw that stuff out there. And I mean, look, some players want quiet. Some players want anonymous. Some love the idea of having people actually care who they are and say hello. And again, like I said, I don't think people are disrespectful in this market. I know for a fact that most people are. So again, it is what it is. And he made the choice. Again, am I surprised that he made the choice? No. The only thing that surprised me was the term. That was it. I just thought he would get. I thought he'd get more money, and I thought he'd get more term. So
I'm with you, Dave. Like, we crunched the numbers for weeks, and I thought he was going to be closer to $9 million. And I thought he'd get, like, the 6-year versus 7-year thing. You could say, well, what's the big difference? Well, my whole point is, like, well, why not just sign that extra year?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to why it was a 6-year deal. I don't know if Mike McIntyre asked him about, like, why it was a 6-year deal versus a 7-year deal. I mean, at the end of the day,
Murat was on the Zoom as well, so he's going to be joining us in a couple minutes time or any minute now. So we'll also ask Murat about it as well.
I did like sorry, Drew, but I did like how Mike when it was the news came out that Carolina was going to have Ehlers, and then when someone had the projected lineup, Ehlers was on the second line.
I saw
and
that.
I was like, what's going on here?
Well, you know what? So he goes to Carolina, and like you said, Carolina is definitely a team that's got Stanley Cup aspirations. They're always been sort of looking for that one player, that one goal scorer, that one person to put them over the top. And obviously, they think that Nikolaj he fits with their system. That's why from the get-go, everyone sort of pointed to the Carolina Hurricanes as the team that would be one of the most likely teams to see him end up on. He fits with how they play. He fits their analytically inclined way of thinking. Everything about it made it a good sense. They had the cap space to fit him in without any second thought. So a lot of this makes sense. This is sort of how we all, to some degree, thought it was going to play out once it became apparent that he was going to go to free agency. From the Jets' perspective, I'd say that Carolina is the team, or anywhere out east. It's not like the Jets. They're going to regret not having Nikolaj Ehlers in their lineup. They're going to miss Nikolaj Ehlers simply because he's such a talented player. They're not going to rue, and he's not going to come back and torture the Winnipeg Jets on a regular basis because they're only going to play him twice a year, barring any sort of Stanley Cup final matchup between these two teams. We welcome to the program our good friend straight from the Nikolaj Ehlers Zoom call, Murat of The Athletic. Murat, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. How are things?
Hey, good morning. Happy to be here. Happy to be energized, well-fed, caffeinated, ready to talk hockey with you guys for what this is going to be our last chat of the summer, isn't it?
This is the penultimate show. We have next week is the season finale, and then we're back on Banjo Bowl Saturday. So yes, this is the last opportunity that we'll get to talk in this format. We'll, of course, hug each other when we see each other on the street, like we always do.
Like we always do.
Yes. Okay, so you were just.
I want a Murat hug.
Well, I don't want to, unveil the secrets as to where Murat spends a lot of his time and does a lot of his writing. But I'll let you and Murat discuss that off air if he wants to divulge that information for you. You were on the Zoom call. You were just talking to Nikolaj Ehlers. I read a couple of the quotes that our buddy Mike McIntyre put out on the tweet machine. So what was your take? What was your impression of the call and the conversation you just had with him?
Yeah, Nikolaj Ehlers is a thoughtful guy. He's well spoken and articulate, and he takes his time to sort of explain his point of view. So I think the key is that Jets fans will want to hear is that he focused a lot on just how much he loved his 10 years in Winnipeg. He says he loved the city. He loved the fans. He said that as a player, you play for the fans in your city. He reflected on the playoffs and feeling like he couldn't even leave the building because there were so many fans kind of in the streets and all that. And he said, hey, I know that might sound like a bad thing, but for me, that's why I love doing this. So I think his connection to the fans is something he's reflected on quite a bit in recent times. He was also asked about, well, hey, is it about that you wanted a quieter place, whatever that means, or was Winnipeg media too intense? And Mike asked that question, and Ehlers said, no, I love you guys. Like, I had a good relationship with each and every one of you, which maybe sounds good for you guys to hear as well, right? Like, it seems to me that based on what he's saying, anyhow, he was in Winnipeg for 10 years. He'd become a free agent. He wanted to see a different place, challenge himself in different ways, join a different team and see what he could become in that context. And he was very conscientious to put as much love for Winnipeg into that presser as he could.
Rod, did anybody ask him why a 7-year contract? Pardon me, he signed a 6-year contract versus 7 years. I'm sure you were kind of thinking that too when you saw that he signed, right? Because I think a lot of people thought that the Jets were offering him an 8-year deal, so whatever other team he chose would have been a 7-year deal. And it's not a huge deal. We're only talking about 1 year, but I guess were you a little bit surprised that it wasn't a 7-year deal with Carolina?
It's a good question, and it wasn't asked. That's the truth. It was more about, the whys of it. And I don't think that term was all of it. Eric Tulsky was also in the chat, and he said, if Ehlers wanted more money from somewhere else, he could have gotten it. Like, he was pretty clear about that it was a matter of just making the on-ice pitch and hoping for the best from the Hurricanes' perspective. I had heard at one point that, and these two things are unconfirmed, right? They're, I think, from people that I trust, but they're not from Ehlers and they're not from Chevy, so take it with the appropriate grains of salt. I had heard that one of Winnipeg's last offers, maybe it was the last one, was 5 years at 8.5. And so that maybe primed me for not expecting that it had to be max term. And I don't know what Ehlers' end of career priorities are either. Does he want to, at that stage reevaluate? Is he thinking of a return to play in Switzerland or Denmark or something like that? Like, these are good questions. And to your point, he wasn't asked. So I guess I'm speculating, but I really can't speak for him and shouldn't speak for him, even though I've just sort of done so. So my apologies.
Well, you know what? You mentioned that he's gone and he signed a deal. He's with the Carolina Hurricanes. So now the Jets free. I mean, it's been a busy week, right? You have the draft, you have development camp, you have free agency, you have Nikolaj Ehlers leaving, but the Jets did a flurry of signings. So did any of those flurry of signings? I know you had done a projection on The Athletic about the Jets roster for next season. Did any of those flurry of signings, even though I've read the article, I'm going to let you speak for yourself, just in terms of, give you the sense that the Jets can offset the loss of someone like Nikolaj Ehlers?
I mean, my first question or response is a question back for you. Like, do you guys have Easter eggs on your show? Like, are we tucking references to your next Winnipeg Jets guest into the questions?
I was thinking that too as well, Murat. It's like, I think Dave said Fleury 4 times there.
It was good tongue in cheek. It was very good. It was well done there, Dave.
Yeah, thank absolutely. You. Some references were Haydn into the question. But in terms of the signings, I think there were, two different flavors of takeaway for me. We can talk about Toews and Nyquist, which are one side of it. I think one of the most important things that Kevin Shoveldayoff and I guess it would be Craig Heisinger did was load the Manitoba Moose with AHL stars and quality players. And you guys are going to be all over that. You cover the Moose thoroughly. So the difference between what some of Winnipeg's young prospects can do when they're insulated by quality players, when their line mates are generating scoring chances and controlling play and getting to the middle of the ice. Like, Dave, you and I talked about this a few times last year where the Moose had to work so hard for everything they got, and they could be in a better situation. I think that Winnipeg did really well to kind of open up the, I guess, playbook, open up the purse strings, whatever, to make sure that they committed to a lot of quality AHL players. And then at the NHL level, lots to talk about too. I don't know if you want to talk more Moose or go straight to Toews and Nyquist, but obviously
Toews and Nyquist. I mean, go to the Jets if you will.
Yeah, I think that the Jets are perhaps inadvertently conducting an experiment on what it takes to win in the NHL. And that sounds weird, but what I mean is this. There are some people who believe that winning a hockey game means having the best player on the ice, or winning a matchup, one line against another. You win that matchup if you have the best player on the ice. And there are some people who believe that you win by not having the worst player. Like, if you've got a weak link out there, even average players can expose that at the NHL level. So never.
How we feel about Drew. Go on.
So for me, what Winnipeg has done in their pivot, as Nikolaj Ehlers has signed elsewhere, now they've added Toews, they got Nyquist, or they added Tanner Pearson, Cole Koepke. They've done a really good job, perhaps not of raising the ceiling of their team. I'm going to be very cautious with what I expect from Toews until we see more from him. But what they've done by adding those other veterans, including Nyquist, is they've added, like they did last year as well, a really deep team where you can go to the fourth line and it's NHL veterans who can play and who might conceivably help you on the score sheet as well, which is new for them in the last few years compared to ages ago,
So to your point there, Murat, sorry for interrupting. The ceiling might be lower, but the floor is higher.
Yeah, it's a really high floor team. The ceiling can go up if Jonathan Toews is a miracle worker, but I just want to have patience for that. So I think that, that is kind of what I'm saying, is it's a really high floor team. And, Ehlers out, Toews and Nyquist and others in. You're not saying like they just became world beaters or more dynamic than they used to be, but there are ways in which that they added quality players and a high floor team for sure, I think.
Well, it's like I say to one friend in particular when we're talking about the Jets. I say that depth wins you regular season games. Depth and exceptional goaltending that they'll likely have from Connor Hellebuyck. So that, yes, I would say that the roster as currently designed is not Stanley Cup caliber, but it's also, laden with veteran and professional hockey players that should, bridge the gap for when you maybe need to acquire some of that higher end talent come a trade deadline or come later in the year, depending on how the regular season is shaping out.
I think that has to become the Winnipeg Jets play, right? Like they may have tried to spend money in free agency and offered Andrew Mangiapane this, or hoped that they were able to fit Ehlers in. And the reason that they structured Toews' contract with so many bonuses was just in case that Ehlers fit, and then those bonus overages would be next year instead of this year. They tried, but now that they're here, they're going to be in a position, likely based on the Sandberg and Velarde deals, to accrue cap space throughout the year and then take another big swing. It's what they tried to do last year, and we've seen it work for them in some years with Paul Stastny, Kevin Haves, and other additions that they've made. And we've also seen what happens when the guy that they think is going to be the best fit has a no trade clause and asserts his will to go to Colorado instead, and Brock Nelson. So it's got to be the plan now to use that cap space to build it up and to make a big swing. And we've seen it work and not work. So they are in a tight spot. We know their goals, and we know that they're a win now team. They're really going to push while Hellebuyck and Scheifele are at the top of their games. And so it's going to be fascinating. Basically, through the rest of the summer, into camp, into trade deadline, all of it, there's a potential for moves.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Drew's muted there.
Sorry, Dave muted me, and then I forgot to unmute myself. I was saying Murat of The Athletic. I was doing a reset. It's a thing you do in the broadcasting world. Murat of The Athletic is our guest here on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
And Murat, if I can read a sentence from your article, I thought you really nailed it here. At least I'm on the same wavelength as you in terms of Gustav Nyquist. Murat writes, he's not an Ehlers replacement or close. He's one more veteran option who is more likely to chip in than drive results. Hopefully, saying that verbally did it justice, that line. And I think that's accurate, Murat, right? Like, were the Jets ever going to replace Nikolaj Ehlers? Really, like apples for apples? I don't think another Nikolaj Ehlers is even out there, to be honest with you. So I think you nailed it with Nyquist. It's just another veteran option, in addition to guys like Alex Iafallo and Tanner Pearson. Like, you have to figure out where these guys are, where they fit in on those three lines, right? But I wanted to ask you about something that you mentioned earlier about Dylan Samberg, Morgan Barron, and obviously, who am I forgetting here? Gabe Vilardi is the other pending RFA. Are you expecting those contracts to get done, or do you think we could maybe be hearing about maybe a Kyle Connor or Adam Lowry extension coming up in the near next couple days?
I think the first thing that we'll get, if we haven't already, but I don't think I've seen anything. It makes sense to me if Vilardi and Samberg file for arbitration, and I'm in summer mode in my brain a little bit ever since this week is over. But I think the deadline is today, this afternoon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. And so that, I think, is the next play that we'll see, and that will prevent offer sheets. So that's good. It will create a timeline where, okay, eventually an arbitration hearing will be scheduled. And then I think that my guess is that everybody involved will want to avoid arbitration so thoroughly that it will become a little bit of a deadline, and maybe an August type of signing or something, or maybe late July, whatever that is. But that's not a guarantee, right? There's a chance that that's not what happens, and that contract negotiations go into September, and you're seeing a September extension like Kyle Connor had once upon a time, or Patrick Laine once upon a time, even Josh Morrissey once upon a time, right? So that wouldn't be out of the question. And to your point about, say, a Kyle Connor, Adam Lowry extension as well, though they're eligible now, like you said. And while I don't think that there would be a hurry on the players' part, their deals where the Jets are going to make some offers, and I think there's interest in both players' part to return to Winnipeg. It's a situation where, because the mutual interest is there, there's no guarantee it doesn't happen this early either. I guess that's my slightly rambling, possibly detailed way of saying I don't know, but all of that is possible. Well,
one of the things that is possible, and I was listening to our chat with Kevin Cheveldayoff yesterday, and if, to use some wrestling parlance, when, the guys they're announced, and all of a sudden they come running down to the ring, and they're just burning down there. And to me, that would be Brad Lambert when Kevin Cheveldayoff is saying his name in the press conference, talking about guys with that opportunity. And look, I know that Brad Lambert is similar in the sense that he's a speedy winger. He's a center. He thinks of himself as a center, but the Moose, of course, played him like a winger last year, especially towards the end of the season. Though, from your perspective, do you see this as his third year here in North America, or I should say playing pro in North America? So from your perspective, Murat, do you think there's that opportunity? Do you think that Kevin Cheveldayoff's words we know they would have had a conversation with him in the exit interviews, but from your perspective, was that dangling the carrot and saying you need to have a very good summer because there is a big opportunity for you?
I mean, I think that, dangling the carrot, so to speak, that little motivator. I think Cheveldayoff, he was asked about speed. Is the team going to slow down? So, okay, well, he thinks of one of the fastest players in the organization. And then I think he used it as an opportunity to throw a little motivator out there. Mm-hmm. At a different spot in the same presser, though, he's talking about how Tanner Pearson, Cole Koepke, et cetera, are going to be forwards number 12 to 14. Mm-hmm. And if you go through the roster and include Adam Lowry, who's recovering from surgery, there's 11 forwards of NHL veteran and experience before those guys. So I think the stick is there are a lot of guys in the way of Brad Lambert stepping into the Winnipeg Jets lineup this year. And that is the challenge. Winnipeg's in a weird, unique spot where their youngest player on the roster is Cole Perfetti at 23. He'll be 24 this year. And a lot of teams, integrate more young 20 players or even teenagers onto their team. The Jets were doing it when they were going to the Western Conference Finals as well. And part of that is on their own development plans, the teams. And part of that is players stepping up and leaving no room for debate, which I think is what Lambert would have to do in September to win that job. My guess is we see a lot more AHL than NHL time because I think there's too many guys in the way. But when you lay that out there on your, essentially your July 1 press conference and you name Brad Lambert, if you're Lambert out there right now, you got to think that hey, they're thinking of me. They want me to step into this. And now there's a challenge out there for them.
Murat Tesh of The Athletic, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, as he paraphrased your writing and talking about drivers versus passengers, Nikolaj Ehlers was unquestionably a driver on the Winnipeg Jets last year and for a number of years before that. Do the Jets have enough drivers up front, or are they too top heavy with sort of that, most of their offensive force? Cole Perfetti is the exemption to that one on that top line. Do they have enough drivers elsewhere in the lineup for next season?
I mean, it's a great question, and I think we're going to see some changes in playing style and changes in kind of what a Winnipeg Jets hockey game looks like, unless there's some massive changes to the lines. Like, we know what Connor Scheifele and Velarde look like as a trio. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of puck possession. They're good at getting the puck up ice. They're really good at holding it on the boards and then finding cutbacks or moments where somebody's curling in, and Kyle Connor's finding dead ice on the soft ice to create a scoring chance, and Scheifele's got his back turned to somebody and he's just waiting for the right pinpoint second to make that play. We've seen that. And then afterwards, to me, there's so many questions, and you're not going to have Ehlers' puck transporting ability, just the ability to create a scoring chance out of nothing or get the puck from his blue line into the other zone out of nowhere. I do think, though, whatever Toews is at this stage, he's a smart hockey player, and you're going to get good protecting the middle of the ice from him. Gustav Nyquist is not, I guess, a player who with a lot of edge or physicality, or he's not going to get his nose dirty in all those types of ways, but he is a smart veteran player as well. If Iafallo gets a promotion, he's a really smart veteran, great forechecker. But I think what you'll see is the veterans will get asked to protect the middle of the ice in the D zone. Maybe there'll be some more D zone time. Maybe the veterans will be smart enough, especially Toews, are effective enough defensively, such that D zone time doesn't turn into as much pain as it could. But the days of the freewheeling Jets are, especially when Ehlers hops over the boards, there's nobody to replace that, and they're going to have to find other slower burning, more cyclical ways of generating offense, and may score fewer goals this year.
Brad, we joked about Haydn Fleury. Well, he is coming on the show at 10:30, but we were joking that Dave kept mentioning a flurry of moves. And the player I wanted to ask you about was Ville Heinola, because Haydn Fleury signs, and it kind of looks like, the Jets' top six is pretty well decided, right? You've got Morrissey, DeMello, you've got Sandberg, Pionk, and then you've got Fleury, Miller / Shen. And Ville Heinola seems like he's now still the odd man out. What does next year look for Ville Heinola? Is he a Jet? And is he going to be a healthy scratch for most of the year? Is he going to play for the Moose most of the year? It just seems like he's kind of a little bit on an island right now.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what he looks like at camp. I'm assuming he makes it to camp. One of the options for Winnipeg is moving on from a player here in the off season. But, over the years, whether it's Heinola, whether it's Logan Stanley, there have been gentle trade requests. Not like I'm out of here, not like I have any problem with Winnipeg or anything like this, but hey, can you please play me? That has come up. And so Winnipeg has floated guys' names, including Stanley and Heinola. And what they haven't received is an offer so good it's ever been worth moving on from them. So my assumption is Winnipeg has a whole bunch of defensemen at camp. My assumption is Heinola is the odd man out because as dynamic as he can be when he's in good health and flying and at the AHL level and all that sort of stuff, he has missed a lot of time, some through health, some through the Jets simply not playing him this season. And it's hard for me to think a 24-year-old is going to separate himself so much from the Fleurys and Millers of the world that they choose to keep him, but maybe. And so I guess what I'm thinking is that somebody either gets hurt and there's no roster logjam, or players end up on waivers, and he could definitely be one of them, just given the numbers. And then we'll see if maybe he gets a fresh start somewhere else. The last thing I'll say, I always say so many words, is last year we didn't know at this time that Haydn Fleury would make the team, and the right situation and circumstances, Fleury's own strong camp, Heinola's ankle situation, others, right? Like, having too many defensemen on July 5th is not really a problem. Having too many defensemen in October can be a problem. And that maybe says that a move isn't necessitated until we get into camp.
And that was a nice flurry of words there, Murat.
A huge flurry. Pardon.
I'm gonna go to Dairy Queen and get a McFlurry, or is that McDonald's? One or the other.
That's McDonald's, Drew. Come on.
Sorry,
come on.
Blizzard,
Dairy Queen's
Blizzards
the
or Dairy
Blizzard.
Queen. Yes. You know, Ezzy, I don't eat sweets. This temple doesn't get sweets put in it at any point in time.
Yeah. Well, you know, we've talked a lot about the current team, but I want to talk about the future team, Murat, because of course we just spent the last week at Hockey for All Center. So what were your kind of takeaways? Was anything catching your eye from development camp this past week?
Well, first of all, I want to praise you for the double duty of doing multiple press conferences in one day. My editors didn't let me do that, so I was only only at Canada Life Center for a couple of those days. That said, Sasha Boumediene, what a skater! Absolutely, just a pleasure to watch skate. The guy is, I think, a cut above even at this level. It's nice to see Colby Barlow wire some pucks again. About early on last season, there were some pretty solid questions about, I think, what he was accomplishing at the junior level. Great playoffs. And when we spoke to him and the way he sort of owned it, he said, you know what, that's on me. I needed to be better. And like, didn't shy away from that. I don't know. I appreciated that. But maybe my like overall on ice observation is more about Braden Yager and how few holes he has in his game. And it's really dangerous to do any evaluation at all at this time, right? These guys are here to get to know each other, to get to know training, to get to know the fitness tests that they do. But he just seems like somebody who is going to have a long pro career. What level of offense he creates, that's up to him. I'm not sure yet, but like he just gets so many details right. And yeah, I was very impressed with him, kind of his stature on that ice.
So, well, on speaking of stature, I did have to credit Kevin Cheveldayoff telling us the story about Victor Klingsell, the 5th rounder from 2025, who actually we had a really good chat with him on Monday, and he's a confident young man, but he's not big in stature. And you could tell that kind of gives him a bit of a chip on his shoulder. You could see when we talked to him about, and I suggest you go and watch that video, that interview. But I thought it was really funny because Kevin Cheveldayoff was telling us, I asked him about the prospects yesterday, and he was telling us a story how at the combine, Victor Klingsell, who's 5'10", came into the thing, and they asked him, what was his height, what was his weight. He said, I weigh, 180 pounds. I'm 6'6", and just walked into the room and said that to all the Jets and their people. I thought that was pretty amusing. So anyways, go on.
He also said he would have definitely got drafted higher if he were taller. And I think that's probably true, but also something you only say if you have a tremendous amount of confidence.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, he's a Swedish kid. He and his dad and Sasha's dad played hockey together, and he and Sasha grew up together. So a little more connectivity in the organization.
At a macro level, Murat, when you look at free agency around the NHL this year, to me it seemed more restrained than I would have thought, especially with the influx of cash that was available with the rising salary cap. There weren't any I would say the worst signing that I can think of was Cody Ceci going to the Los Angeles Kings and getting heavily overpaid by Ken Holland, who apparently didn't watch him play last year for the Dallas Stars. But just at a larger level, sort of your thoughts on free agency around the NHL now that it's, really, not come to an end, but it's dwindling with its impact at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny about Cody Ceci. I heard that was really thoroughly criticized kind of in the LA market. And then Mikael Granlund, I think, getting 7 or 7.25, kind of low sevens, surprised me too. And overall, though, I think heading into it, seeing the cap go up and seeing how much cap space teams had collectively, I did kind of expect an even crazier spree, an even crazier Fleury, let's say.
There's that word again.
Then, there's two things that changed my thinking only after the fact. One is Eric Tulsky said in an interview with Carolina media about a week ago or a few days ago that there are so many teams looking to add and few obvious sellers compared to traditional off seasons, so that there was a lot of competition for the same guys, but also on the trade market, fewer pieces he thought might become available weren't available, and it was a little bit wonky that way, and that everybody seems to think that they're a team that can win this year, and that's usually a complaint you hear at trade deadline time where people haven't been eliminated from the playoffs yet. So that changed things, and then some people started talking about, well, hey, that 2026 free agency class could be just crazy, and there's Kyle Connor would be a Winnipeg example if he gets that far, but there's a lot of elite players who could become free agents, and maybe teams are also saving a bit of cap space for that. And so I don't know. Those are the two reasonable sounding explanations for me. But yeah, it didn't sound crazy. There are people saying Ehlers was going to get 9.5 once upon a time, right? And I think 8.5 is sensible for him, but it's not one that I think of as crazy, and maybe that reflects the market.
Very well said, as always. Big summer plans now that we're pretty much into that mode. Exciting plans afoot for Mr. Murat.
I mean, you may have realized or noticed that there were fewer Murat's mom takes throughout the regular season and playoffs. She's in Turkey right now, so I might go see mom.
Nice.
That's the goal.
That's a good goal to have. We wish you nothing but the best. For the off season. We'll of course see you around, as we always run into you here, there, and everywhere. And we thank you again for all the time you've given to us throughout the course of the season. We look forward to doing it again next year.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Be well, Murat Ehlers of The Athletic. His writing will continue, of course, online, and we look forward to welcoming him back next season to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Murat, have a great weekend, buddy. Take care. Murat Ehlers joining us this morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. A commercial-free first hour, which means we got to pay some bills. Haydn Fleury at the bottom of hour number 2. Dave Minuk in the top right. Ezra Ginsburg in the bottom middle. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show continues on this Saturday morning. Don't go anywhere.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. The program is brought to you by our good friends at Play Now. We thank them for their continued support and title sponsorship of all of our programming. Of course, if you're interested in becoming a sponsor and advertiser of this fine show, as well as the Illegal Curve postgame show, just reach out to one of us and we'll be glad to send you all the appropriate information. Always excited, big things in store for next season on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, and of course next season on the Illegal Curve postgame show, but still more to come today and then next week to wrap it up before we all depart for our summers where we don't talk to one another. It's what we call our freedom at that point in time. We talked a lot about Nikolaj Ehlers. We talked about Jonathan Toews. The other moves the Winnipeg Jets made, again, none of them would be what you would describe as headline grabbing. None of them would be described as replacements for Nikolaj Ehlers, but they all sort of fall under that category of there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. And that's what the Winnipeg Jets have largely gone out and signed free agents for. Gus Nyquist, Tanner Pearson, Cole Koepke. Those are the sort of the headline names I would describe, and then there are a whole bunch of other players that are designed to probably more so than anything fill out the Manitoba Moose. Philip DiGiuseppe, Kyle Clay, guys like that we've talked about. You've heard their names. Guys who are fringe NHLers, more so very good AHL players. So, in general, your thoughts, Ezzy, on the moves the Winnipeg Jets made during free agency earlier this week?
Yeah, we talked about it. It started off slow for Dave M on the website on Canada Day, July 1st, but it quickly picked up, especially when the Jets announced those 2-way contracts, right? They announced them all 5 at the same time, right, Dave? Which I thought was, I'm not sure if they've done that in the past, but kind of appreciated. It was like, here's a package of players that
those all came on July 2nd. So those
July
were
2nd,
those were all
right.
July 2nd signings. That would be what, Wednesday or Thursday? My days are, I guess that was
Canada Day was
July
a Tuesday. So
yeah.
So July 2nd was definitely the busy day. And
yeah.
I mean, the signings like Phil DiGiuseppe, like Dave will speak to this. Like, he's a guy that's played a lot in the AHL, I think over 300 games. Like, these are big signings. Cale Clegg, good solid depth defenseman for the Jets, more so the Moose. But so these signings, don't want to gloss over them. I mean, these are key signings. Walker Dewar is another one. Mm-hmm. But obviously the big ones, guys, are Gus Nyquist and Tanner Pearson, I would say, is a bigger one. Cole Koepke, but specifically Nyquist. And I don't know how many times we're going to have to say this, but Gus Nyquist is not Nikolaj Ehlers. Mm-hmm. He is not Nikolaj Ehlers. He's not replacing Nikolaj Ehlers. Whether he plays second line wing, I mean, I have absolutely no idea. It's possible. But like we talked about with Murat, Gus Nyquist is a veteran player that you bring in to replace some of the offense that you've lost with Nikolaj Ehlers, right, Dave? Like, mm-hmm. Nyquist everybody knows, you can go to Hockey DB and look up his stats. He had a 75-point season last year, but he's more of kind of like a 40. He's 2 years ago. Sorry, Drew. He's more of a kind of 45 to 50-point guy. And everybody will remember he came into the league with the Detroit Red Wings, and I forget how many years he played, probably something like 10 years.
8 years. 8 years.
Was it 8? Yeah. So pretty close.
Yeah, not bad.
But he was a guy that was always like a really solid kind of middle six guy, right? Like not necessarily a top line player ever, but a guy who could definitely play on your second line or third line. So, I mean, Gustav Nyquist to me is an interesting acquisition, right? Like Drew said, it's on a 1-year deal. So you're not bringing in Gus Nyquist, thinking like, oh, this is going to be a guy who's going to be a big part of our group for 4 or 5 years. This is a guy that you're bringing in on a 1-year situation, hoping that obviously, he's able to tap into the fountain of youth and his numbers are going to be closer to what they were a few years back as opposed to last year where he had a down year, right? But, you can't understate the loss of Nick Ehlers, guys. Like his impact at 5-on-5 and on the power play, it's kind of like Moneyball, right? You're going to have to try to replace that in the aggregate because there's not going to be any Nikolaj Ehlers player. Like it's not like there's a signing that Chevy hasn't that's coming that is going to be in the Nikolaj Ehlers camp. So, Koepke, Pearson, these are guys that are going to compete for bottom 6 roles, most likely 4th line roles. But as far as Nyquist goes, yeah, he's going to provide offense in your second or third line. And whether that's, with Jonathan Toews and Cole Perfetti on the second line, it remains to be seen. But there's definitely more questions, guys, right now in terms of and again, it's July 5th. So luckily, we're not going to have to break down forward line combinations for a couple months. But like, if you're looking at the Jets' top 12 forwards, let's say, there's definitely, I think, like some obvious, like obviously Scheifele, Connor, Velarde, that's your top line. But I don't know right now if you can say, yep, Nyquist, Toews, Perfetti is your second line. Like I think.
Well, so let me interrupt you there. And
a lot of these things are going to play out in training camp in the preseason.
So let me ask you this, Dave, because I asked Murat this question about, we know Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, that worked well last year, but it's a different team than last year's team. When you have a second line, if Cole Perfetti is your best player, beyond your top line, at least offensive threat, and he probably is. Does that lead you to think the Jets will try and split up Connor, Scheifele, and Velarde, maybe spread that wealth a little bit more through the lineup than we've seen previously? And even before that, it was, Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler. So we've seen that, duo of Connor and Scheifele attached to each other for a decade plus almost at this point in time. How do you think with the changing of the players below them in the lineup, that's going to impact the roster and the line combinations?
Well, if you're curious about my thoughts, just rewind to last week's show when I exactly expressed the idea that I thought that might have to be the option, that they might have to break up that trio in order to share, spread the wealth a little bit to give.
Oh, you mean the trio that had a career year last year?
Well, I mean, he brings up a valid point in that line was so good last year for the Winnipeg Jets and contributed so much.
Right.
You're breaking up something that isn't necessarily broken, and you don't know if it's going to fit together in other areas.
Well, I mean, again, I just said to spread the wealth a little bit just because you don't have the goal scoring capabilities replacing it. Now, ultimately, it just ends up becoming speculation nation because as he says, and as we've said on this show numerous times, I mean, ultimately, this is all going to be determined by training camp. We're going to see how things play out. It's very hard to pen anyone in because we haven't seen these guys. We haven't seen, how Tanner Pearson looks alongside player X or this person, maybe Gabriel Velarde's ready to move to the middle. I mean, it doesn't look like it. The Kings didn't think he was a center. The Jets don't think he's a center, although he takes faceoffs. But the fact of the matter is, doesn't really have the speed for center. But ultimately, we don't know what the summer is going to unfold or how the summer is going to unfold. So I'm always loath to say, yes, this is the move the Jets need to make. I mean, you're right. The Jets did a lot of things on Tuesday. It was very funny though, because I remember on Monday we were talking amongst the media and I said, well, why are you going to go to Canada Life Center? What the hell are you going to do? You can sit at Matt Frost and talk to each other. The only reason why I think they went there instead of coming to Hockey for All was because they think they were having lunch. And so some of us sacrificed lunch so we could do another day of development camp coverage for all the folks.
Heroes don't wear capes, Dave. All heroes don't wear capes.
They just wear Prairie Made shirts. But the fact of the matter is that
did Dave just give a plug to that company? What just happened?
No, I just said Prairie Made. Prairie Made's just it's not the name of the company. It's just a shirt. But anyways, the point I'm making is that
it's nice color. Is that like? Would you say that's a burgundy?
I think it's just a red.
Is it? Yeah,
I'm not fan. I
don't think it's dark enough to be burgundy.
I'm not fancy like you. I don't even know what burgundy is, but I can.
Also,
tell you
what's the difference between burgundy and maroon? Isn't it the same color?
I think maroon's got a little more purple in it.
Okay.
Ooh, the illegal design hour with these two. But anyways, that's a show for another time.
We're team CMYK.
Anyways, so no, I mean, I just think like it was just funny though, because like I'm sitting there and as you mentioned how there wasn't much for me to do, and Connor and Liz asked me to jump on WST, so I went on with them.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that. No big deal. Dave showing up on Winnipeg Sports Talk Sunday Live. Maybe my invite was lost in the mail. I'm not sure.
No, I don't think it was sent at all, to be honest. I think that's what happened.
And the best part is like the funniest. Well, it wasn't Sunday Live though. It was a Tuesday, but it was an abnormal show for them. But the funniest part was I was like, I had literally tweeted out something like, well, there's been a lull. Since there's been such a lull in the action, check out our interviews from today. And then literally I go on and list like, oh, there was a signing. I was like, oh, great. And then 1 second later, oh, there's a signing. So they signed Koepke and Pearson, who, by the way, former teammates of Dylan Sandberg and Mark Scheifele. So some connectivity there. But
the Koepke signing, sorry, Dave, I'm interrupting you. The Koepke signing to me is, more intriguing than the Pearson and Nyquist signings, just because, this is a guy who played a couple years in Tampa. Then he went to Boston. He got, I think he only had 17 points last year, but he had 10 goals for the Boston Bruins. He's a guy who can, look, if you can get double-digit goals.
For the record, a bad Bruins team.
Yeah, a bad Bruins team, no question. If you can get to double-digit goals, you're doing something right in the NHL. So I'll admit that I've not done a deep dive into Cole Koepke, at this point in time, but I'm intrigued to see what he can bring to the bottom of the Winnipeg Jets lineup for next season.
Yeah, Jay Fresh, who does one of his rate cards, said that he put up good low event fourth line results, and his even strength defense was 90%. So he, and
he's got that physical element to his game, right, Dave? He's a guy that throws his weight around.
Yeah.
And it provides some of that energy. And like Drew said, 10 goals last year. That's not nothing, right? Like 10 goals in the NHL is 10 goals. And so to me, like that's replacing, some of the offense and some of what you lost, like with guys like Mason Appleton and Brandon Tanev, right?
Yeah. There's no reason, given what Brandon Tanev got in Utah, and given what Mason Appleton got in Detroit, a 1 year, $1 million contract for a guy like Cole Koepke makes a lot of sense to me. It seems like I'd rather have a Cole Koepke than, with all due respect, than a Tanev or an Appleton at this stage of their career, just to see what he's got.
The funniest part was all I could think when I saw Appleton sign that 2-year deal at 2.9 AAV with Detroit was that his agent made fun of Vlad Demesnikov signing a $3 million deal and saying like, why sign early? You can wait, you'll get more money, and then jokingly saying that, they're looking at 4 or 5. I was like, oh, I guess he didn't quite get that $4 or $5 million offer, but
that goes back to my point that I was talking to Murat about. Again, for the most part, I thought general managers were
restrained.
Yeah. Look, I don't love the Brandon Tanev signing in Utah. I thought that's too many years and probably too much money for a guy who really didn't contribute a ton to the Winnipeg Jets.
He had 0. What do you have? Like 0 goals or 1 goal?
He just wasn't. And even forget about the goals. He wasn't even effective in the role that I would say that.
I'll say, sorry, Drew, just to go, we'll go back to you here. But the one thing I'll say about Tanev is at his age, like the type of, he needs to play a certain style to be effective. And I think that style, now that he's a little bit older, like he's not as quick, maybe a little less physical, right? Like that's all I'll say. Like Brandon Tanev's not going to score 30 goals for Utah next year, right? It's just not going to happen. But like he's got to be a guy that's in on the forecheck and doing all those things and being an energy guy. And I think at times he was giving that to the Jets and he was blocking shots. on the PK. He's very limited right now with what he can do offensively.
Right, he's a limited player. I mean, he's a limited player, and to sign him, what did he get? I think he got 3 years in Utah, if I recall correctly. I thought that was too many years. I mean, all due respect to Brandon, is the guy who's carved out a career strictly based on hard work and tenacious energy. So it's good for him, But I thought that was a poor decision. But in years past, the number of poor decisions, could be higher. It could fill up in two sides of a piece of loose leaf. This year, I don't think that was the case. There were some decisions that left me bewildered, but fewer than I would have expected, especially with this amount of money being available, largely available for players.
Also, shout out to Nate Schmidt for getting 3 years from Utah after being bought out by the Jets. I love that. He's got a Stanley Cup and a 3-year contract, Drew. Not bad.
Look, great for Nate. Again, I wonder, yes, he looked good in that system in Florida, but there's probably, does he look the same? Does he look as good in a system like that in Utah? Or what are you expecting from him over the next 3 years?
I think he's still a third pairing guy. Is he not on Utah? But yeah, we'll see. But I just like taking all that or putting that all aside, I just think it's nice that he parlayed a buyout from the Jets into a Stanley Cup, and now he got a 3-year contract. So just good for Nate. He's always a guy that I liked off the ice for the Jets.
Well, it's again, I think it might have been Jay Fresh who does great work. So credit to him. For his player cards, he sort of he really makes it very digestible and it's easy to understand. And I think he made a very valid point earlier that all the teams in the league, the upper class teams have holes, have areas of concern. So I don't think it's strictly a Winnipeg thing. And I'm going to include the Winnipeg Jets as one of the upper class teams. You win the President's Trophy, you're an upper class team until things change and you're not anymore. But you look at, I'm looking at right now the Edmonton Oilers roster. Now the Oilers roster always looks great when you got McDavid and Draisaitl. But you look at their third and fourth lines there. Nothing about that would be what would excite me tremendously. Never mind their goaltending situation. Just a lot of the teams, maybe Florida's the exception as they managed to re-sign everybody, but a lot of the teams that have holes, and that's why I think again, what happens in the regular season, the first 40, 50 games of the regular season are more about just putting yourself in a position to qualify for the playoffs, and then you need to begin to really find your opening day roster and your playoff ready roster might be two very different rosters for a lot of these high class teams is what I'm trying to sort of get at in that case. And I think a lot of teams left themselves wiggle room to try and make those acquisitions mid-season.
Right, and I think this year, or pardon me, I should say this upcoming year, the 25-26 season, I think the opening night roster, the early, let's say the early season roster for the Jets could look a lot different than the playoff roster, as opposed to, let's be honest, this past year where there was only 2 real moves that were made by the Jets at the deadline, and that was acquiring Brandon Tanev and acquiring Luke Schenn. Right. For the most part, the roster stayed exactly the same throughout the year, with the exception of different line combinations and everything like that, right? But yeah, it goes back to what I said before. I still think there's a lot of question marks in the forward group. I think on the D-core, it's exactly the same. So this was the best defensive team in the NHL last year, so it's the same group of defensemen. And obviously there's some question marks about, is Ville Heinola going to still be a member of the Jets once the 25-26 season begins? What's Logan Stanley's future with the Jets now that Haydn Fleury signed, all that stuff. But when it comes to the forward group, there's jobs to be won. We talked about it with Murat. You bring in Cole Koepke, you bring in Tanner Pearson. Now all of a sudden it's a little bit harder for a guy like Brad Lambert to make the team, right?
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's who we're going to bring in right now. It's Winnipeg Jets defenseman Haydn Fleury joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Haydn, good morning. Your backdrop is better than my backdrop, better than Nezzy's backdrop, and better than Dave's backdrop. But welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's our pleasure. First of all, congratulations. It was last week, about maybe maybe about 40 minutes from now that the news came out over the wire that you had re-signed with the Winnipeg Jets. So, sort of walk us through that decision. We know that you spoke highly about your time in Winnipeg and you spoke positively about it at season's end. But, why did you decide to sign the contract when you did, so close to the start of unrestricted free agency?
Yeah, I think, when it really came down to it, and both when we were getting close, it came together really fast. And, they're just talking with my wife and, my family about, the positive experience we had. And, my wife and I really enjoyed our time there. And I think a lot of that has to do with, how the organization treats us. And I think just the guys in the room, you've heard of all these stories about, Florida and, how they really enjoy like being in the rink, being at the rink and, being in that dressing room. I think that's kind of something that Winnipeg's building and we have in our dressing room. So that was, getting down to it, that was, what I wanted. I never wanted to leave, and glad we could come to, something where both sides felt was right.
Haydn, before I ask you a hockey question, whereabouts are you right now, and where are you going to be spending the majority of your summer this off season?
I live in Sherwood Park in the off season, just outside Edmonton. So, we've had some tough rain this past couple weeks, so it's nice to get outside and enjoy some weather.
Can you send some of that rain out east to Winnipeg, because we haven't had a drop of it, and we definitely need some.
We've had so much. It's been nuts, but looks like it's clearing up in the next couple weeks here. We're going to get some hot summer heat.
And to get back to Saskatchewan a lot in the summer as well, I imagine you still have family there.
I haven't. I actually should. My parents just moved back last year officially, so I haven't been back in a while since my brother was in the Memorial Cup. A lot of my family lives in Alberta now, so not too much family back in Sask.
I wanted to ask you about last year, because obviously, you spent some time in and out of the lineup. I think I checked. You played 39 regular season games, and then you were able to play 8 more games in the playoffs. Like, for you, how would you assess your season overall?
For me, I thought it was a really good year. I think the situation I was in, coming out of last summer, signing a 2-way, not really knowing, what team I was going to be on. Was I going to be one of the older guys on the Moose, or was I going to be a depth guy on the Jets? And, it's kind of had some bounces go my way early in training camp with a couple injuries to Stan and Billy, and just thought I took advantage of an opportunity given to me, and started off the year well. I think the whole team starting off 16-1. I think everybody's the vibes were high, and then once Sammy got hurt, I thought I stepped into another opportunity, and I thought I played really well. And the injury at Christmas time hurt. I think that took a while. It kind of set me back a little bit, and then came back after the injury. I think didn't play my best. I thought I was off. My knee was still bothering me a little bit, and then came home on bye week. Got right into the gym with my trainer that I use in the summertime, and we put in a good hard week's work, and saw my treatment guy, and kind of just tried to get back to feeling myself and feeling right and feeling strong. And I thought that showed post All-Star break. I thought I played some of the best hockey I have in my career.
Hayden, got to ask about the Manitoba Miracle, because we know what it felt like up above, but from your perspective, I mean, do you still think about that game, because it seemed to just resonate? And I mean, it's not often games have a name, like Manitoba Miracle, so associated with them. What's your feeling even now thinking about it?
Yeah, I think, oh man, I don't even know. It still comes up in my feed every once in a while, where you'll see and I'll still click into it just to see it, because it was. It was crazy. I don't even know how to explain it. I don't know if there's words to explain it, but no, it's unbelievable. I think that's just a testament to the group we have in our room. I think there was never any quit. I think there was probably times where everybody had written us out, and I think you just look at guys just stepping up. There was, seeing from an outside source, all the talk about can Fetz make the next jump, and he did that with flying colors, and I think you're only going to see him get better. And I think just for the group in general, there's no quit. It starts with Laus, it starts with J-Mo, Bucky, Scheif. I think the leadership right on down. It's just such a tight knit group, and we didn't want that our season to end like that. And it took all of it. Took a couple overtimes, but we finally got it done.
Haydn Fleury, Winnipeg Jets defenseman, is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Haydn, you spoke about the leadership group. You spoke about the tight bond within the room. Free agency has sort of come and gone, and of course, there's going to be new players. In particular, one who's also got a pretty good nickname in Captain Serious, Jonathan Toews. I guess when you bring in a player like Jonathan Toews, with his pedigree, with his reputation, with his history of winning, into your dressing room, what does that do for you as a player? Do you feel that sort of level of excitement when you see a guy like that getting dressed next to you on a day in, day out basis?
Yeah, for sure. I think once that signing got announced, I was like, it's crazy. I think growing up as a kid in Canada, I think you probably played mini sticks and imagine yourself as Jonathan Toews, or scoring the goals at World Juniors, or winning the cups with the Blackhawks. So just really excited to get to know him, really excited to play with him, and just learn from him as best I can. I think I watched the press conference yesterday, and I think Arnie alluded to everybody just excited to be in the same room, same presence as him, and just learn as much as you can from him, and go to battle with him. I think that's a big addition to our team. I think it'll just be something where once everybody gets back and everybody's healthy, I think it'll make our team that much better.
Now, Haydn, you mentioned earlier when Dylan Samberg went out of the lineup, you replaced him on the second pair, and we've talked about a lot on this show the strength of the Jets on the left side D with yourself and Josh Morrissey and obviously Samberg. And I wanted to ask you what you've kind of learned from those other two guys on the left side, because I think you'd agree this past year maybe Dylan Samberg is not he's not an unknown player anymore. I think people around the league are starting to realize that this guy is a bona fide shutdown defenseman.
Yeah, he's a stud. There's no word. There's nothing else I can say about him. He's a stud. I think the Jets kind of kept a secret around the league for a couple of years. I didn't know much about Sam before I got here, and getting on the ice with him in training camp, I saw it right away. And yeah, he's just he's really athletic. He's really big. He takes up a lot of ice. He's sneaky good on breakouts, making like these subtle little like juke plays where you think a guy has him, and then all of a sudden Sammy's out of it and he's hitting the middle guy. And I think just the skating ability, the athleticism, I think it all just comes into a package with a guy that's also 6'4". And I don't know how much he weighs. I don't want to say something too high, so
just say 200 plus, Haydn.
Yeah, we'll say 2+. But no, I think the sky's the limit for him, and I wouldn't be surprised somewhere down the line he's representing the States on the biggest stage.
Well, you mentioned the States, and that's of course where you played most of your hockey career, and now you've of course have 1 year in Canada under your belt. From your perspective, Haydn, what's it been like? I know when we spoke to you at the exit meetings, one of the things you talked about was being able to witness the impact of hockey in this community. So from your perspective, what was it like kind of having that chance to play in a Canadian market?
Yeah, I loved it. I think, I think maybe sometimes in my career, not playing in the pressure markets can, maybe lead me astray. I think, your mind isn't really like, your mind can get away from the game, away from the rink. But I think maybe sometimes in the past you take that, take that little sigh, you take that little, I don't even know how to say it, but I think being in Winnipeg, being in a hockey town really kept me, on my toes, and I really enjoyed it. Really couldn't say enough good things about the city and the fans, the ownership. Mark Chipman, I think he's the best owner I've played for, and I played for some really good ones, but he's just such a good person first and foremost, and I'm really grateful that I get to come back.
Haydn Fleury, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Haydn, you mentioned, coming back from the injury. You suffered that injury, if I recall correctly, in Toronto, and then you came back, and you said you weren't at 100%. You're playing through the injury. You took the bye week. That's really where you began to feel a little bit better. What's it like playing when you know you're not physically at your peak? When you know that there's something, you're battling through an injury? We hear that a lot. but I don't think, certainly Dave, Ezzy, myself, we don't really appreciate what that means. But from your perspective, how difficult is it to play through an injury and be your best when you know that physically you are battling an ailment?
Yeah, I think it was more mental than anything. I think right from the start, it's mental, and that's something where when you're coming back and you're still not like quite there, it was more the mental side. It was frustrating. That was probably the word I'd say to describe it. I think just the whole situation was frustrating just because where I was at, and then the game before Christmas, I'm flying home after the game. It was just there was a bunch of stuff where it just made it really frustrating. And coming back, I think the thing was I didn't know how close I was until I was actually out there, and then obviously not feeling great and feeling behind, especially for a guy like me that uses my skating so much, made it frustrating. But I think use the bye week as a reset and really got back to it. Came back early to Winnipeg and got back into it. So I think that kind of 2 weeks for the Four Nations break, I thought was a good mental and physical reset, and I think it showed after the break.
Hayden, I wanted to ask you about Luke Shen, another guy from Saskatchewan. When we came over prior to the trade deadline, it seemed like he was just a perfect fit for the D-Corps. Added that veteran experience, block shots, physical. For you and the other defensemen, like when you found out you were getting Luke Shen as part of the Jets, like were you guys just all like fist pumping? Like it just seems like he just rounded out the defense so well, and he was such a perfect fit for you guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think the element that he adds, I thought we were maybe missing a touch, just with how big, physical. You mentioned the blocking shots, like on the PK, all that kind of stuff. I thought it rounded out the defense group perfectly, and I thought before you could. Like, I don't even know how to explain this. It just like the what he added, I thought we were missing, and I thought it showed that after the break. I thought whoever played that night, there was going to be a different dimension of what we could throw at teams. I thought I thought after the break everybody stepped up, and in the playoffs we really got into a little matchup type stuff. But I thought we matched up well against other teams. I thought every guy you could sorry, I'm losing my track of thought here. You could match up well against anybody. I think there was everybody complemented each other in different ways, and I think that showed in the playoffs where you could slide up guys up and down pairings and just throw different looks at guys.
Hayden, when we talked to you about, after the Dallas series, I think one of the things you said was, they had more of the big moments than we did. But just from your perspective, when the season ends, and, I remember we were talking to Gabe Velarde, and he was like, I'm still thinking about what happened. Like, guys were asking about the summer, and he's like, I'm still thinking about, the last 3 games we've played and things I could have done better. But from your perspective, are you like ready to go right away and be like, let's move on, or do you need to take some time? Like, do you watch hockey? Did you watch the Dallas Edmonton series at all? What's your sort of process when the season comes to an end like that?
Yeah, so I take a week probably where I reflect on like certain things, and probably it's easy to reflect on the Dallas series. I think for me, like the high sticking penalty in game 4, I think it was the 4-minute high stick. Some people could call it bad luck, but like for me, I'm looking at like I had that puck on my stick basically, and I was gone the other way, and I overskated it, so I have to recover, try and lift his stick, and accidentally hit him in the face and get a 4-minute. So like that's the stuff that hurts. I think when you look at the playoffs now, it seems like in the past they kind of put the whistle away the farther you went, and I think there's been a standard set with the league that's probably not going to happen. I'm just going off of the conference finals and the Stanley Cup finals. There were so many power plays and penalty kills. So I think special teams is just such a big part of the game now that you really need to master it, and you got to do your best to stay out of the box. And just going back to the big moments, it just seemed like looking back at that series, I thought we were the better team 5-on-5, and talking with Arnie, I thought I think he felt the same. It's just they're an older veteran team that, took care of those big moments. They took care of the PK or on the PK and the power play. And I think that's, basically what the series came down to. And, I think we have a younger team and we have a lot we learned from that series, and it's going to make us better.
Haydn Fleury, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Haydn, 300 plus games now into your NHL career. How, if at all, has your off-season sort of training changed from when you were, earlier in your career to, say, this off-season? What's the focus in terms of your off-season approach and and how you handle this time before training camp begins in a couple months?
I think the biggest thing that's changed would be staying on the ice. I think some guys like taking like a month or something off the ice. As soon as I'm back in the gym, actually this year I was skating before I was back in the gym. So really just don't want to lose that on ice stuff. I think I'm not old, but I'm not young. I think it's just getting to the point now where it's you don't want to lose the on ice. It takes too long to come back. So I think being on the ice right away and getting back in the gym is just something I've really started to, take more pride in. And, I think it's helped. I think, I continually get better every summer, and I think it's starting to show. And I think, last year was a good base for me, and now I just got to continue to build on that.
So Haydn, now that Nick Ehlers is signed in Carolina, are you like the unofficial like tour guide for Nick? Like you're going to be able to tell him everything that he needs to do when he's in Carolina?
I mean, I actually I work out with Jordan Martinook in the summer here, so I was talking to him. He was asking me about Fly yesterday, so told him Fly's a unbelievable guy, unbelievable teammate, and you're really going to like him. And that's about it. If he needs some golf courses to go play in Carolina, I can help him out.
Pinehurst.
Yeah, Pinehurst. I can set him up good there. So
can you set us up good there?
Yeah,
I could. Yeah, I could get you guys out there. But no, I think obviously gonna miss Fly. I got to know him really well over the last year. A lot of dinners that he paid for. Just a good guy, and gonna miss him a lot.
And just one more for me on Nikolaj Ehlers. I mean, obviously, he's an extremely talented player, and like you mentioned, Haydn, you're an excellent skater as well. Like, and there's a few other guys on the Jets that are pretty good skaters, Kyle Connor and Josh Morrissey. But like, I always like find it interesting when you're talking to NHL players about other NHL players, because, I mean, is he not one of the best skaters that you've ever played with?
Yeah, for sure. I think the top end speed. For me, it was always like the plays that he makes at top end speed. Like when he starts doing that loop in the ozone where he's like, seems like 1 inch inside the blue line and he's like still got the puck on his stick, and then he turns the corner, he's coming flying down the slot. Like not many guys can even do that. Like, and it shows like he's so light on his feet, he's so fast, and then he has an absolute bomb to go with it. Like not many guys score with slap shots like him anymore. And that's like a vintage skill that like is like a lost art, and I think it's so cool when he does it. But no, he's a world-class player. I think he's probably the greatest Dane of all time, and just really happy he got paid, but I'm gonna miss him.
Now, Haydn, I asked you about the Manitoba Miracle, but I'm just curious, any other sort of highlights for you, anything that sticks out that was really kind of a positive, something that you really enjoyed from your year here in Winnipeg?
The home opener was cool. I haven't been able to play in one for a long time, and coming out in front of the Jets fans was something that I found really special, especially not knowing kind of the whole situation to start the year. Wasn't really sure like how it was going to go, and I thought being able to play opening night was really special. And then the standing ovation when we clinched the President's Trophy. I think we were losing to Edmonton. I think it was 3 or 4-1, but it was like with 10 minutes left in the third, and the place just went nuts and made losing the game feel a little bit easier. But no, it was a special year. I think I haven't been a part of a team with the runs that we went on. We had 2 10-game winning streaks. The start of the season was special, and I think it was just a special year all around. I mean, we had a goalie win the Hart and the Vezina. That doesn't happen too often. we had JMO go to Four Nations, KC and Bucky go to Four Nations. Shai should have been at Four Nations. So I think, it was a really positive year. I think just the group of guys we have just makes it really enjoyable to come to the rink, and just excited to get back to it.
Haydn Fleury, Winnipeg Jets defenseman. He signed his new contract last week around this time. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Enjoy the rest of the summer. It'll only be a couple months before we're back here in Winnipeg. Looking forward to the next season, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again then.
For sure. See you guys in September.
We'll see you in September, Haydn. Be well. Have a great summer. Thanks so much.
Have a good one. Thank you.
You too. Take care.
Thanks, Hayden.
There he goes, Haydn Fleury, joining us this morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Great.
And that's incredible. And he invited us to golf with him at Pinehurst.
That's so nice of him. I can't believe that.
He didn't say to golf. He didn't say he did golf with him. He said he could hook us up there. So I mean,
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he didn't say with him. To be clear,
Haydn is currently texting Scott Brown. Keep those guys away from me.
Amen to that. We will take a break because I don't think we've taken very many of them today. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, looking forward to the rest of the summer and, of course, our final program next week here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. That will be the season finale before we head off on our break. But be sure to join us next week, 9 a.m. And, of course, if there's anything else that happens in the course of the summer, we will bring it to you live, both on illegalcurve.com, and you never know when we're going to pop up with a special pop-up edition of a show. We say this all the time, yet we've never really had an opportunity to pop up. There's never been that, as of late at least, there's never been that huge story that requires us to get back together.
Let's be honest, Drew. That's more of a Kenny and Rennie thing, the pop-up show.
Well, that's because they don't have a set time. I mean, Kenny and Rennie, we love Ken and we love Sean, and we'll see them, and I hope some of you will see them on Tuesday night at their year-ender. But they don't have a set time to do a weekly show like we do. Everyone knows Saturdays are for the Curve, 9 a.m. Kenny and Rennie, they're more, they're the whack-a-mole. You never know when you're going to have to hit them over the head a little bit and get your fix of Kenny and Rennie. But in any event, yeah, they popped up. They had a show on. I think they had Chevy on yesterday, so kudos to them. I'm sure it was an excellent broadcasting. Dave M., you spent the week at Dev Camp.
Yep.
You hung out there. You, I think, brought in a cot and a sleeping bag, and maybe had a little bit of a bunk bed set up. I don't know if you roasted marshmallows or not, but your the Dev Camp impressions that you can bring forth here on the program.
Okay, well, I'll start with Sasha, then I'll go to Alphonse, and then I'll break down Marcus Loppin. I'm not going to go through everyone, but it was just an opportunity for these to get to know some of the draft picks, right, Ezzy? I mean, you hear these guys get their names called, and to be honest with you, it is fun to meet these new kids who are now part of the organization. I mean, to talk to, I was the only, did anybody else join us? No, I think it was just me talking to the 7th rounder. So yesterday, and we, of course, have that interview on a little site called illegalcurve.com. But the worst part about it was that, there was so much stuff with the Toews interview going, or the media availability, that it got a little bit overdone. But Jacob Cloutier, real nice kid. He's a 7th rounder out of the Gloucester area, just outside of Ottawa. Drew, I'm sure you're familiar with it during your time in Ottawa. Yes. But he had a fun story to tell.
Drew maintains, though, you can't find a good rye bread in Ottawa.
You can't find a good rye. Winnipeg rye is better than the rye breads that are found in Eastern Ontario. And
hashtag confirmed. I agree with that. But no, but I just thought, Paulie Edmonds was with me, I should say, yesterday for that one. And so Paul asked him about, because he had spent some time in Pittsburgh as a 15-year-old in the Wilkes-Barre AAA program or something like that. And Jacob was telling a story about how his coach was Canadian, and because there's U.S. Thanksgiving and Canadian Thanksgiving, that his coach said, "Oh, do you want to come to my house for dinner tonight?" For the Thanksgiving, so for Canadian Thanksgiving. So he said, "Sure, that's great." And he goes, "Oh, there'll be a few other people there." So he walks in, and Sidney Crosby is at the table. So pretty awesome story for that kid. And he's an undersized young man, but again, like I said, you can see that he's got some interest, and he actually heard from Cole Perfetti, because he was drafted he's playing for Saginaw in the OHL, and Cole Perfetti, of course, played for Saginaw. So Cole Perfetti said he said that Cole Perfetti reached out to him when he got selected by the Jets, and of course, lots of good stories. I mean, like I said, that Victor Klingsell, interesting player, has a pretty heavy shot, I thought, and he's a pretty good passer, and again, as Murat was talking about, we're not going to sit there and break down like what Colby Barlow did on the 3-on-3 drills, or any of that stuff. But ultimately,
how were Sasha Boumedien's crossovers on day 2 of camp?
I will say,
how were the edges, Dave? How were the edges?
I will say, though, that he is a phenomenal skater, and he's a pretty funny kid. Like Kelly Moore asked him a trivia question of first rounders born in Oulu, which is where he was born in Finland, and he was guessing, and he didn't know them, so Kelly filled him in. But he was good natured about it, and again, just in terms of, it's more just seeing these kids kind of learn about Winnipeg and getting to become familiar with the organization and the city, and we know that they were taken out for dinners, and they really just seemed to enjoy it, and for me, it was about seeing those kids like the Jacob Julians and the confidence they have, the Zach Narings after winning a national championship. Watching kind of the difference, right? Even like Marcus Loppinen, the 5th rounder who's going back to Finland after playing in Victoria in the WHL this last year. He's going back to Finland for 2 years. He's actually doing his military service. Remember, Teemu Selanne had to do that when he was drafted by the Jets. Henry Nikkinen did it, so it's mandatory.
Story for illegalcurve.com coming up about military service and Marcus Loppinen. I think Dave's going to be flying to Finland this year, Drew.
Yeah, I'll be PJ. Now that Toews is done with it, he's got his PJ back.
Yeah. So again, like it was just interesting to talk to all these kids. And again, I'll have a link on the website today to all. I think we did 14 interviews with the prospects, and of course Jimmy Roy, who's director of scouting, director of the amateurs. So he is that one's available with him. You could hear the excitement with a player like Braden Yager. And how he's excited for him to get going. And I think that's kind of as what we were talking about earlier when Drew mentioned like all the free agent signings. and the insulating. Kevin Cheveldayoff said they expect to have like 6 kids, which was funny because when he said 6 in my head, I was like, which 6 is he talking about? But he's expecting there's a number of players who are going to be.
What age does he define kids as? Also?
Yeah, I didn't understand, but like maybe he meant like some guys graduating to the NHL. I'm not sure exactly who he was referencing because I didn't think there were going to be 6. Obviously Elias Salamonson played on the team last year. So, anyways, we'll see what it ends up being. But it just, Colby Barlow did look like he was, in tip-top shape, and we know he had a pretty monster playoffs for Oshawa, right? They went up against Jacob Julian, fell short, but again, it was more just that those guys are going to be ready. And again, Jimmy Roy he didn't want to like start waving the pom-poms when he was talking about Braden Yager, but you could see there was some excitement there for a player like Braden Yager to get ready for him to turn pro and be insulated now with some really good veterans in the AHL, including what was the name of the guy that they got from LA, Drew? He was a 2019 second rounder. The Jets signed him.
Like they signed him.
Fagel. He's a Swedish kid. He's a 2019. It was with that flurry of signings, but I think Daniel Fink, who's the communications director of the Moose, said he's got the most goals in the AHL since 2021. So you're adding guys who are going to be able to score in addition to your prospects. It's a pretty good thing. And like I said, I just thought it was a really good week of development camp, and we've got lots of video on Illegal Curve's Instagram. We've got lots of interviews on our YouTube channel and obviously on the website.
And Dave, you mentioned, just to continue what Dave was saying there about development camp, like I think you'd agree, Dave, there's a different feel around this year's development camp compared to last year, because now you have guys that are now not one step away from playing pro hockey. Now these guys are going to be stepping into the Manitoba Moose organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I recall correctly, it was last year at Dev Camp that the Rutger McGroarty trade happened. So that right around Dev Camp is when they announced he wasn't coming to Winnipeg. I don't think the trade happened till August.
Okay,
maybe that's what it was, because I remember it was a Saturday morning. We were, because if I recall correctly, we were broadcasting from the ice, not the Hockey for All Center, and I think that was a big topic of conversation that sort of overshadowed what was going on the ice.
The trade was August 28th. But,
okay,
you are right though, because I remember looking back at my notes from last year, and at this time, it was announced by Cheveldayoff that Rutger wasn't going.
Yeah, the whole conversation was, why would Rutger McGroarty show up at development camp if the Jets were going to trade him?
Right.
That was what we were talking about this time last year.
Yeah.
Right. So instead, the focus was the on ice and players who wanted to be there. So when that's the focus, and again, there's rarely ever any bad news stories coming out of a development camp, because it's all young players who have, are getting their, most of these guys were just drafted, 3 days before they arrived in Winnipeg. So there's that excitement. You're getting to know them. They're getting their first taste of professional hockey to some degree. So, Dev Camp is generally a good times only vibe sort of situation.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up the 2025 development camp. At least I wasn't there, but to me had a bit of a different feeling, because Jacob Julian isn't a year away from playing pro. Jacob Julian has now won a Memorial Cup, and now he's going to be playing for the Moose next year. Braden Yager is going to play for the Moose next year. Colby Barlow is going to play for the Moose next year, right? So these are some of the top prospects in the system right now. And Braden Yager is an interesting one, guys, because speaking of NHL training camp in September, that's a guy we're going to be talking about. And obviously, I'm not going to say Braden Yager is going to make the team out of training camp and he's going to be the second line center. But I mean, if there's any prospect that could make the Jets out of training camp, it would be Braden Yager. I think Dave would agree with that.
Up front, Salamonson on the back end, but
yes, Salamonson, it's going to be tough for him because just of the
too many defensemen.
Exactly, there's too many guys that the Jets have on the right side with DeMello and Pionk and Colin Miller and Luke Shen. We know the names, right? But a guy like Braden Yager, like I'm personally going to be excited to see what he can do in training camp, because as Dave documented on the website and social media, like he had a monster year. Split between Moose Jaw, and then he went to Lethbridge. But Lethbridge, I mean, and that's what you'd expect. He's a first-round pick, so you'd expect him to put up big numbers for Lethbridge, right, Dave? But Braden Yager is an interesting one that I think we're going to be talking a lot more about at training camp and leading up to the preseason, because the Jets obviously have very high hopes for him. And this is a guy that I think you'd agree, Dave. He's not going to be a guy that spends 3 or 4 years in the AHL. He's going to be in the NHL pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll see. And the only other one I should mention, there's 2 other guys I want to mention. And again, like I said, there's so much work that we did over the last week, right, boys? So you'll be able to check all that on the website. But Kevin He, as he the 2024 fourth rounder, I mean, his motor, someone didn't tell him it was supposed to be summer skating, and he was supposed to take it easy because he just never stops. So he's ready to go. And the other player we have to mention, of course, because as he's Hockey Manitoba, so we have a contractual obligation. Got to talk about Owen Martin, the third rounder. Of course, we were not on the air when he got drafted. We were part of a media availability, so we had that available on the website. But I mean, it's one thing to talk to a kid who's a Manitoban. He's from Oakbank. He gets selected by the Winnipeg Jets, but then you actually start to talk to him, and it was really neat last week because when we talked to him on Monday or Tuesday, whatever day it was, but it was funny because he talked about how he was the guy who was a little kid at the then Iceplex, getting fist bumps from Adam Lowry. And Murat actually had a picture of him, a young Owen Martin with Adam Lowry at a dev camp because Adam Lowry looked like he was 4 years old. So, but it was really neat.
It was a black and white photo. It was that many years ago.
No, but then it was incredible because Colby had a photo of Owen Martin, after a skate walking down the kind of the hallway and fist bumping and signing autographs and taking pictures. So really cool kind of full circle moment for a kid.
This is all just making me feel really old, Dave. I'll be honest.
For sure. I mean, look, it's amazing that there's been this many, it's 15 years of the Winnipeg Jets, right? So, but I just thought it was really cool to hear like that story, like where Owen Martin's telling about how he was a young kid at Iceplex and meeting these guys, and now he's the guy. And I even asked him, I said, like, you've got a shirt right now with the Winnipeg Jets logo that says Owen Martin. Like, what is that? How does that make you feel? And he just talked about like how impactful it's been, for his family. His grandpa is like such a huge Jets fan. So for him to be drafted by his hometown team and again, only the third Manitoban drafted by the Jets, right behind Kasdorf and Stallard. And both those guys were, I think Stallard was Brandon and Kasdorf was Portage La Prairie, I think.
Sounds right.
So, I mean, I think, because he had said, I thought Kasdorf was Winnipeg, but I think he might be, I know he played in Portage La Prairie, but I know I don't trust Hockey DB for birthdays because they're always wrong. They always are birthplaces, sorry. They always say Winnipeg, but I'm pretty sure.
The last team that Jason Kasdorf played for was the Leicester Foxes in the Division II German League.
Well,
Thank you,
anyways, so that was a really neat story that Owen Martin got the chance to, put on the jersey and represent his city with all these prospects, and he's from, Winnipeg. So that was that's the way I'll close out the development camp. I thought that was really cool and really neat. And like I said, Colby took a phenomenal photo of him kind of fist bumping and taking pictures with, I mean, all the prospects. And that's the other thing I'll end on a bigger note is just that all the prospects, including taking pictures with Bailey the intern. I took a picture of Bailey the intern with Tyrell Bauer, who's in Winnipeg and he's training. So he was at Hockey for All yesterday, and I took a picture of Bailey and Tyrell Bauer. So Tico Napoli could have had that picture, but he wasn't there. But Bailey the intern got one, and there were a lot of fans, lots of fans actually, all week long, and they got a chance to see the players and interact with the prospects. So that was very cool.
There you go. Dave M giving us the lowdown on everything that's going on at Dev Camp this week at the Hockey for All Center. No better way to end this morning's program. We say thanks to all of you for joining us. We say thanks to Murat Atesh. We say thanks to Haydn Fleury for joining us. In case you missed either of those interviews, in case you missed any of the show, the instant replay is available immediately on the YouTube channel, and the podcast will be available shortly thereafter. We want to say a big thanks to all of the sponsors who make this show. They make the post-game show. They make the website a possibility. Of course, our friends at Play Now, they're the title sponsor. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. If you're looking for something to do tonight, Daniel Simonson, originally from Norway, now residing in New York City. He's an absolute killer of a comic. Check them out. Tickets available, rumorscomedyclub.com. Our friends at Holt Dental, keep our teeth shiny. Our friends at Boston Pizza, keep our bellies full. Our friends at City Place, give us a place to shop and eat and broadcast from as well, whether it's the playoffs or during the regular seasons. And, of course, Seagram's keeps us from getting thirsty, and Wheatland Hockey keeps us well-trained, well, not us because, we're old and washed up, but if you have a kid who's looking to do some off-season training, in-season training with Wheatland Hockey, should be your destination. Support all these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Thanks to Dale Sawchuk. He gave us some money so as he can pay for his cable bill this month. So big thanks to Dale. I saw that. Got to throw that up there on the screen. Not quite summer yet. One more week. Next Saturday, we'll be back again to do another edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the show, subscribe to the podcast, and leave us feedback and comments and everything else along those lines. Everyone have a great Saturday. Whatever you're doing this weekend, do it safely. We want to see you back here for next Saturday's season finale of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Until then, he's Dave Manouk, he's Ezra Ginsburg, and I'm Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.